This is Brave New Waves on CBC Radio 2. My name is Patti Schmidt, and tonight a conversation with futuristic vaudevillian Momus. His real name's Nick Curry, and since the mid-'80s he has been crafting exceedingly literate, clever pop songs. He tends to find himself in trouble with the morality squads on occasion, and that's usually for some of the more morbid perversions in his songs, of which there are many in his catalog. Also tonight in the last hour, a new CD from New York City producer, DJ, and composer. Ballad of a Victim of the Economic Recovery is a song from Chris Knox's 1997 solo album, Yes. Chris is also one half of New Zealand's Tall Dwarves, and they have been recording since 1981. Chris Knox, though solo, is tremendously prolific, and he has a really unsettling, self-deprecating sense of self and song, and he will always describe himself as overweight, epileptic, and bookwormish, with a smile even. Before Chris Knox, we heard from Earthquake Pills, a trio from Calgary. That was kind of their country new wave song, but you have to believe me, there are strange advance kind of influence songs on this record. Their album's called Autodidactophone. D-Ray is the name of this track. Jacques is the name of a one-off project that happened in 1997. It took place between Anthony Reynolds, who is part of a very large orchestral, maudlin, kind of vaudevillian band from the UK called Jack, and he's teamed up here with Nick Curry, known as Momus. This is a very highly maudlin and melodramatic record from the two of them. It's called How to Make Love, Volume 1. This track from Jacques is The Crack in the Ceiling.
Crack in the ceiling grows wider, like the fault line in my heart. I've been in bed for 3 days, waiting for tomorrow to start, waiting for tomorrow to start. The crack in the ceiling is living, it carves life out from this house, while I lay here dreaming of trains heading south, of trains heading south. Like a vine, it is snaking around my legs. The crack in the ceiling is a monster, it feasts on the sick in bed, it feasts on the sick in bed. And I'm just about to forget what it was I do today. The crack in the ceiling is singing with the traffic outside. I sing along in tongues and practice my winning smile. Practice my winning smile. The crack in the ceiling is open wide, like the legs of a reader's wife. And if I could just fall out of bed, I'd toss myself inside. I'd toss myself inside. Crack in the ceiling is telling me things through a thin and crooked mouth. But I'm not listening, I'm dreaming of trains heading south. sound, and you may not see them, you wouldn't know them right away. Today knows that you swell all around me. What it means, what it leads to, again, yeah. You can see the ordinary maps with no places to go. And you know. Counting threes through the window, imitation glass that's been scratched in code to be read by someone else. Do they know that you swam all around me? What it means, what it leads to, again, yeah. You can see the ordinary maps they're pointing.
Something brand new from Brooklyn's Ladybug Transistor. Today Knows is from a brand new 7-inch, showcasing something of a new direction. Very heavy on huge orchestrations here. Before Ladybug Transistor, we heard from Jacques. It's Anthony Reynolds of Jack, and Nick Curry, who is also Momus. A Crack in the Ceiling is from the 97 full-length How to Make Love, Volume 1. You are listening to Brave New Waves on CBC Radio 2. My name is Patti Schmidt, and my guest tonight is indeed Nick Curry. The new Momus album is called Ping Pong, and Nick joins me from our London, England studios after this track, My Pervert Doppelganger.
I've got a pervert doppelganger. He came from over the sea. He hangs around doing sexual crimes, and the blame is getting pinned on me. The blame is getting pinned on me. Whenever that pervert shows his face, my friends all think he's me. They give him records by Square Pusher and a box of Japanese tea. A box of Japanese green tea. He's taken a flat in Smithfields now, where refrigerated lorries unload dead cows. They call him the Smithfields Ripper now, and the rap is getting pinned on me. The rap is getting pinned on me. phone number. I gave her a warning, but yesterday morning she cancelled her date with me and made it a date with me.
My Pervert Doppelganger is from the new Momus album, Ping Pong. And my guest tonight from our London studios is Nick Curie. And if you want to get picky, he is also known as Momus. Hi, Nick. That you put out serves up something that gets at least the British press all in a bunch. You got 0 out of 10 for Hippopotamomus, for songs like I Ate a Girl Right Up. This record seems to have escaped, or have I just not seen the reviews?
No, there was a particularly nasty review. It's not really so much the British press, it's just one paper, which is the New Musical Express, which is nevertheless very important in the British scene. So they seem to have a rather hardline moral position on some of my records. And they took the same view on this new one. They basically said Nick Curry's a man who likes to air the dirty laundry of his mind in public.
Well, what songs in particular get up their nose this time?
I think any of the songs with swearing in them, because they're kind of envious because they're not allowed to swear in that paper at all. I think just the... I think any songs with sex in them as well. It's really strange. There's a kind of very ambiguous stance towards pop music, and pop music especially, which talks about sex. I think rock music is meant to be okay because it's all very ambiguous, and pop music is just too sexy for some of the more serious papers.
Well, why you seem to be singled out by them and always have, the enemy in particular?
Because I think I came out of there's a whole bunch of presuppositions which they shared maybe in the 80s, which I came out of, which was that it was okay to be kind of intellectual, but also to be playing with pop music in a kind of postmodern, ironic way. And I think all that kind of changed at their paper when they were forced to go a bit more tabloid and mainstream. But I kind of stuck with those values and took them into the 90s and continued to reference people like Georges Bataille and use ideas of transgression and all that kind of thing. And they either think that's terribly passé now, whereas I think that's, those are values which I'm still interested in, or else they're I don't know, maybe there's some kind of jealousy that I'm still free in a way, I'm not subject to the same commercial pressures that they are. I don't have some editor telling me that I can't say that anymore.
Well, going way back to the mid-'80s and all the records that you've done, it seems like there's been that mission of transgression. What are the Momus brand values?
The unique selling points of Momus. I suppose just in some ways I'm very left field, but in other ways I'm tremendously mainstream and accessible, because I think I've always tried to make the writing very straightforward and clear. I mean, my father's a teacher of English as a foreign language, and maybe there's something in my blood which is English is a world language which can be very, very effective just telling stories, and if you use it well, if you put it together in a simple, plain way, you can tell the most complex stories and make the most complex points. So on the level of the language, I think I use it very carefully and I just tell a story. But what I'm actually doing then is communicating some sort of dangerous or ambiguous or confusing idea, and it's something that I'm confused about too. That's why I'm attracted to write about it.
Just transgression in general, you mean?
Yeah, not transgression for its own sake, but just in the sense that going into a new place is interesting for a writer to do, and the only new places left are the places that people are a little bit scared to touch, especially in a commercial art form like pop music. They're scared for commercial reasons. They think they'll stop selling records if they start writing about sex with corpses or something. They probably will. But I'm not really afraid of, I don't really care what my record sales are. I'm much more a research and development kind of guy. I'm kind of off there in the laboratory wing of pop music saying, well, where can it go from here? And let's just make some new, frothing combinations of the chemicals that are the basic ingredients of pop music.
Well, Gainsbourg's probably the best example of somebody in pop who was able to, subvert, challenge taboos and mores, but I suppose in the last few years people have been talking a lot about how it's so impossible to shock people now or to get them to think about those things because it's all on the level of sensation now. There can be no deep thought anymore. Is that something that you ever find yourself in conflict with?
I think it's all a matter of context. I mean, things are shocking if the Queen says them, and they're not shocking if you see them on some late-night TV comedy special that's after midnight. I mean, it's all about context, and I think pop music, though, as a context, is still a very conservative place. So people are surprised. I mean, things that they accept and tolerate in a Hollywood film, even, they're going to find shocking in a pop record, or things they find acceptable on page 3 of a newspaper, or page 7 of a newspaper, whatever, some little tremendously horrifying story. Take that out of the newspaper, put it in a pop song, and suddenly it's got a whole new emotional impact. So I think there's still a case for staying in such a conservative medium, just because it's like standing up in a church and saying a slightly rude word. It can work.
Dick, there was this big gap in time, at least as far as availability for records in Canada. I guess it started in 1992. The Ultraconformist was the last record that we were able to get our hands on. So that leaves a gap of some 6 years. What was going on with you?
That's weird, because I kept making records for Cherry Red, which is the label that put out the Ultraconformist. They should have been distributed. I don't know what the situation was in Canada, but I mean, a lot did happen in my life at that stage. I ran off and lived in Paris for 3 years. I got married to a Bangladeshi girl who escaped her family's plans to have an arranged marriage for her, and in some ways, I was in a kind of semi-retirement as Momus for about 3 years, because when I lived in Canada, I was writing mostly for Japanese artists, producing and writing stuff that was very successful in Japan and allowed me to live comfortably, and still does. But basically, when I came back to London in early 97, I sort of got serious again about being Momus, and in a way started pastiching almost what I'd been doing in the 80s as Momus. Because I found there were a lot of young bands in London who sort of rated what I'd done back then and wanted me to come in and sort of produce them and work with them and stuff. People like Jack and Orlando, even maybe Bell and Sebastian, yeah, a little bit. I sort of thought, well, if they can pastiche my early work, I can do it better. So in a way, what Ping Pong is kind of me saying, well, here's the signature that I sort of invented for Momus. And in fact, instead of trying to escape myself and escape work to my because what I was doing a lot in the mid-90s as well was just going off and shooting off in a whole new set of directions and taking up what Beck had done, and a lot of people in the 90s, like Tricky as well, had done, and saying, well, maybe I can do versions of that. But really, I think with the last album, I kind of came back to my strengths, which are, narrative storylines and these rather strange guitar chords and things, and saying, well, hey, I should stick with that,
What was the intention when you were doing the Beck-inspired stuff, to try to cross over?
No, it was just being fascinated by, because in a way what Beck does with music is what I've been doing with words for a long time. I mean, taking little bits of, German fairy tales and Japanese cartoons and, taking that international cosmopolitan thing of almost sampling. I mean, I'd been sampling ideas and styles of storytelling, but he'd been doing it literally with the music and applying it. And I'm still interested in that musical direction, but I think just on the Ping Pong album anyway, I sort of went back to something.
Is it true that Beck's Devil's Haircut is lifted from your Hairstyles of the Devil?
I don't think so. I met Beck in Paris at the end of '96 and kind of asked him that. He was thinking of his lawyer when he said he'd never heard Hairstyle of the Devil, but I believe him, and he was a really nice guy, so I wouldn't want to sue him or anything.
Well, how does it feel that there's all these bands who are coming out of the woodwork, like Jarvis Cocker, Bell and Sebastian, the Magnetic Fields, the Divine Comedy, all of these people who are claiming you as an influence? Does it make you feel like validated or confused?
I think that's a bit exaggerated. I mean, some of these people I've known them early in their careers. I mean, Paul asked me to produce them at one stage. Divine Comedy, I kind of gave Neil Hannon a whole stack of CDs, and I think he went off and said, right, I'm not going to do this.
Your CDs you gave him?
My CDs. He hadn't actually heard he knew that I had some interesting kind of work out there, but he hadn't really heard it, and so I just gave him a bunch of stuff. And I don't know if he was that impressed. I mean, there are similarities, but there are also marked differences. I think he's essentially a conservative. I'm somebody who always just is questioning everything, and in a wistful kind of way, but he's someone who celebrates very much English culture. I mean, he's a Celt, he's an Irishman, and I'm a Scotsman. We have this similar outsider kind of status in relationship to English culture, but he's obviously watched a lot of Merchant Ivory films, and he really buys into the sort of E.M. Forsterisms and the white suits and the straw hats and Helena Bonham Carter and stuff. Whereas I don't. I mean, I feel oppressed by all that, despite the fact that I live in the heart of England.
Is it flattering, though?
To have people rating your work is flattering, yeah. I think Stephen Merritt of Magnetic Fields recently said that the greatest pop lyricists were, I don't know who he said himself and me and and Noel Coward or somebody, yeah.
What do you think, Nick, has been the secret to your fabulous obscurity all this time?
I think it's all down to the bell-shaped normal distribution curve, the fact that most people are normal. And my work is all about escaping normality or hating normality or kind of questioning normality. I mean, actually, I have a core... I mean, I was confessing to you before we went on air that I lived in a suburb of Montreal when I was a teenager. So there's that David Lynch kind of thing in me, which is that there's a really normal, well-brought-up, polite, considerate side, but there's also the wild kind of underbelly as well, which is mostly in my imagination, but which comes out in the records. So there's this sort of, it is a very David Lynch kind of dialectic between those two, and that makes people uncomfortable. You marginalize yourself just by your subject matter.
There's a whole pile of names that usually come up in any kind of interview that you do, often in the liner notes to the CDs, and I've just compiled a really fast short list. I'm just going to name them off, and then I'm going to ask you if you can find the thread that holds all of these people together, because, of course, I'm not qualified. Derrida, Susan Sontag, Godard, Genet, Nietzsche, Kafka, and Gainsbourg. Why do those people come up all the time with you?
Gosh, they probably question normality. I think that Susan Sontag just comes up because of one thing she said, which I thought was a great quote about rock music, which is that rock is aggressive normality. And that seemed like the absolute opposite of what Momus was, which is tender deviance or tender perversity or whatever. And it's that Bryan Adams. Sorry to keep knocking these Canadian artists, Celine Dion, Bryan Adams people, but it's that Bryan Adams thing of 18 till I die, waking up the neighbours and being normal as hell that I kind of really object to in pop music, and is the reason for my unsuccess, but also the reason for my relevance. Maybe I'm the anti-Bryan Adams.
And I suppose so is Godard.
Godard is fantastic because everything he says is original. I mean, I was just watching a video of him the other day on TV, and he's incapable of saying an unoriginal thing, which for me that's really the essence of a great person or a great artist, is somebody who's just got a take on the world which is so worked out that everything they say makes sense, but in this kind of weird, skewed way, which is kind of refreshing to everybody who listens to them. And irritating as hell, because people who've got their own way of thinking about the world worked out are irritated by somebody who comes along and breaks it.
You have this fabulous website, and on it there's a couple of stories of you actively pursuing contemporary artists who interest you. Do you want to talk about who has struck your fancy? Because we're going to hear a song that's related.
Yeah, you're talking about Georgina Starr,
yeah.
I think. My song, The Animal That Desires, kind of takes its place in a work she's just premiered at the Icon Gallery in Birmingham, which is called Tuberama. So it's a kind of musical. Actually just got terrible reviews in the British press, almost as bad as the reviews I get here now. But and it's just looking into the minds of people who are sitting on an underground train in London and trying to imagine that they have weird doppelgangers somewhere in a place called Doppelstadt. And so Georgina and I were seeing a bit of each other last year and talking about these ideas, and some of her ideas infected my album. And basically, she's interested in what people are thinking, when they're, and this is very much what my work is as well. My work is almost like putting a little window in someone's chest or in their head and sort of watching their thoughts. And for Georgina, because she's a woman, she doesn't really know what men are thinking when they're sitting on an underground train. So The Animal That Desires is very much about just trying to say, well, here it is, Georgina, this is the ghastly truth of, men are having sexual thoughts, but they're also tremendously guilty about them, and they're kind of trying not to show that they're desiring or whatever. And so it's really imagining a world, an asexual world, where there's just one sexual animal in it. And that's really what in a sense, we're all pretending the world is like when we're in public anyway.
All right, this is Momus and the Animal That Desires from Ping Pong.
A strange delusion. I imagine myself to be the only creature in the world that desires and reproduces sexually, and everybody else is an amoeba, a tapeworm, a eunuch, a virus. So ridiculous. Someone understand me, help me bear the strain. Say they feel the same way, say I'm not to blame. Won't someone understand me, help me bear the strain. Say they feel the same way, say I'm not to blame. Won't someone understand me, help me bear the strain. Say they feel the same way. Won't someone understand me, help me bear the strain. Say they feel the same way, say I'm not to blame. Won't someone understand me, help me bear the strain. Say they feel the same way, say I'm not to blame. Won't someone understand me, help me bear the strain. Say they feel the same way, say I'm not to blame.
Momus from the new album Ping Pong, and a track called The Animal That Desires. And Momus, Nick Curie is my guest from our London studios. Now, Nick, you just came back from a U.S. tour.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I've seen more gushing reviews from the American press in a long time. What do you think you did right?
Well, I kind of feel that I must seem like some sort of English eccentric, effete, effeminate kind of stick insect, a bit like Quentin Crisp to them. I mean, that's the only way I can see it, that because I'm sort of doing these bizarre kind of dance routines and things on stage and just playing to a dat backing or whatever with Gilles, who's also very thin and kind of looks like a stick insect in a very elegant Parisian way, kind of playing a little stylophone, which they've never seen, this little handheld synth from the 60s. And so we were just camping it up and saying, we're going to have fun and we're going to do this continent and see how long we can go with
this continent.
Do America, see how far we can go without getting beaten up for being effete and pseudo-homosexuals, because we're not actually homosexuals, but of course Americans think you are if you're even moderately elegant. And the closest we got to being beaten up was the sound guy in Washington leaving the mic open on the cassette he was making for us, saying these guys are going to get their ass kicked, and kind of. In fact, we didn't, but.
He left the mic open on purpose when he was taping you live off the board or something?
Yes, accidentally he left the mic open, and there were all these people around him sort of saying, "Who are these guys? These are faggots." That's probably not a Washington accent, but.
Well, I think it's pretty close. It's not like your records haven't been available in a couple of circumstances in the 80s and early 90s. Why do you think they're just catching on now? It seems something weird's afoot in America, and I'm working my own theories, but...
Well, I mean, they haven't been released domestically in the States, and nobody's sunk any money into promotion in the States. I mean, a few $1,000s were put into actually talking to the press and sending things out in a sort of effective way to the press this time. And I think there are just a lot of people, journalists especially, who have been aware of me in the past but haven't had the opportunity to say to their editors, well, listen, we should do something on this guy because the records haven't been domestically released. So there was a kind of kinetic energy being stored up, and it just suddenly all burst out because in a way the timing was right. Also, there's this thing of being almost a new artist in the States, because it's manageable instead of people having to go back and listen to 15 CDs or something, they just have to listen to 2 and say these are the ones that came out here. And those 2 actually are very, I think they're very likable records because they have all the songs I wrote for the Japanese, which are very cute, and also there's something. Maybe this thing which I'm calling futuristic vaudeville on the Ping Pong album. Maybe that's something that it comes as a big relief to people. Post grunge and post techno and post sort of music with the post rock thing that comes out of Chicago and all the rest of it, where it's all everybody's doing this wallpaper music and it's experimental and formally interesting, but somehow you buy all these CDs and you listen to them and they're there in the background, but they don't leave any resonance in the mind. You don't walk along the street with a line and a melody in your head that says something to you, and it's slightly disturbing, but also very relevant. And I think maybe my records, it's yet again the return of the song, the revenge of the song.
I want to talk a little bit about the major pop hit writing that you've been doing for, is how you say her name, Kahimi Kari?
Kahimi Kari, yeah.
And how that all started and how long that's been going on.
Well, I see, I'm very lucky in that when my career starts going quiet in one territory, like it did in Britain, I guess in the early 90s, suddenly all the lights and things and the bells start ringing in another territory. So in Japan, just about 92, I mean, I had a very successful tour, and the records were selling well, and I met a lot of key people in the Japanese pop world, at least the credible end of it, people like Keigo Oyamada from Cornelius, who was at the time living with Kahimi Kari, who was a photographer, but she was just starting to make records, and Keigo and Kahimi both wanted me to make records with Kahimi. So we made an EP in Paris just actually the first week I moved to Paris, I was in the studio with Kahimi doing the I Am a Kitten EP, which did really well in Japan, and just record by record, Kahimi came really from nowhere to be this big star. Certainly a star in a very narrow but influential sector, which is like the Shibuya kind of scene in Tokyo.
What is that?
Well, Shibuya is like the western part of Tokyo where all the incredibly trendy people, I mean, you see them in every major city of the world, these very, very amazing, eye-catching, trendy young Japanese who seem to have endless money to spend on not just designer labels, but, very, very cool streetwise kind of clothes and records and things. And so those people took up Kahimi and Keigo Cornelius as as their king and queen, at least for a while. I mean, Cornelius is still very, very trendy and does very well. Kihimi's moved to Paris, and she's I mean, she still sells a lot of records, but I'm not sure where it's going in Japan. But we're cracking France and we're cracking America with her now. So.
Well, what's it like putting yourself, I guess if you're writing songs for her, you have to start dealing with, and you've done this a little bit anyway, the idea of you become female first person in your songs for her.
Which is fascinating. I think I'm accused a lot of misogyny in Britain, at least, where possibly just because I have a slightly more French attitude. I actually celebrate women as sexual creatures, but not in this kind of Camden way. But I think in a way that can you can adapt that into some sort of psychic transvestism, because in a way that was motivated by jealousy of women. I think I really wanted to be a woman, in the sense I wanted to have the power and the glamour that women have, because I think it's a fantastic power, the power to, since men rule the world in a sense, and for the time being that's not going to change, unfortunately. The best power you can have is to seduce men, and artists are kind of, in a sense, trying to do that, or, well, seducing everybody.
Do you give Kihimi power that goes beyond just seduction in the songs you write for her?
I just celebrate. I mean, they're quite stupid songs in a way. I mean, it's a great. They just say things like, there's one called "Good Morning World," which just says, "Good morning world, it's so nice to be a beautiful girl," and that's just pure escapism for me, because I would love to wake up one morning and be a beautiful girl, if only for the day.
Yeah.
And just feel the power I had walking down the street.
So there's no interest in maybe trying to press those taboo buttons that go on in Japanese society?
Well, I mean, I do play a lot with. See, they're not taboo in Japan. That's the thing. Japan is a society where the perversities actually match my own in a lot of respects. I don't really find very much to attack in Japanese culture, because I find it such a fascinating spectacle, such a futuristic spectacle, but also, subtly cruel, but also this highly aestheticized thing, this deep respect for the past and for the future at the same time. All that stuff I really like. So, I'm celebrating just the weird kind of paradoxes of the Lolita syndrome in Japan. The whole kind of thing of the highly fetishized schoolgirls in their sailor uniforms who walk around Shibuya and sell their underwear to businessmen and all that kind of thing. I mean, just the utter perversity of that society fascinates me.
Well, Georges Bataille had his story of the eye, and you have a real-life story of the eye. What exactly happened to you, Nick?
Well, this is a cautionary tale for anybody who wears contact lenses. Always clean your contact lenses with a sterile solution rather than tap water. I was on a ferry between Greece and Italy on my European tour at the end of last year, and somehow I washed my lens container in tap water from the cabin, which was obviously full of filthy, horrible things, including lots of amoebas. And these amoebas actually, if you scuff the surface of your eye, which is quite easy to do when you're putting lenses in, they can actually get into the eye and wreak incredible havoc. So I've been on treatments, heavy steroid treatments and things for the last 6 months or so as a result of this. And there's no guarantee, in fact, that I'll actually get full use of my eye back. So read all about it on the Momus website, basically.
Which you, I understand, update quite often.
If I'm bored, yeah. If I'm not being creative in other ways, I just work away on my website, yeah.
Well, there's a couple of songs on Ping Pong that deal with... there's the information song, but email comes up a couple of times, and I understand you have a fancy, is it a Nokia, a web programmer, email, cell phone, nuclear destruction button thing?
Oh, don't say that. Yeah, Nokia 9000, yeah. Oh, you can't use those in North America, and I don't know about Canada, but in the States they refuse to allow digital networks for mobile phones because the FBI thinks they're going to be uncrackable.
Were you on the highway right from the beginning, or is this a new kind of fascination for you?
Gadgets. No, I've always, really my songwriting started because I was fascinated with the idea of a little tape recorder that had, a record button on it. I've just always been fascinated by technology, and I think increasingly the artists who cut it, the artists who actually remain relevant are people who are technology savvy. You know, you have to be fascinated by technology as well as by poetry and rhetoric and the very ancient things. It's a combination. You can't go into a recording studio, which is like, you know, the Star Trek, the flight deck of the Enterprise, without having some techno lust, you know, as well as the urge to express yourself.
I think that you might have written 2 songs that use email in the lyrics, like the first ever. Is that possible?
Yeah, The Age of Information is really all about the cubist morality that emerges when you write to somebody and they talk to somebody else. And email seems to encourage this awful, but also wonderful gossip kind of situation where you get in trouble. I mean, I'm generally a very indiscreet person because I have a hippie kind of belief in transparency, that everybody really should know everything. We should have freedom of information. But I get in trouble a lot because people tell you things and then they didn't forget to tell you that in fact that was only meant to be told to X, Y, and Z, but not to B and C. So The Age of Information is all about the trouble you get into with email.
All right. Thanks a lot, Nick.
Okay. Thank you very much.
This is Momus from Ping Pong.
This is a public service announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now entering the age of information. It's perfectly safe if we all take a few basic precautions. May I make some observations? Axiom 1, for the world we've become, your reputation used to depend on what you concealed. Now it depends on what you reveal. The age of secretive mandarins who creep on hills of tact is dead. We're all players now in the great game of fact instead. So since you can't keep your cards to your chest, I'd suggest you think a few moves ahead, as one does when playing a game of chess. Axiom 2, to make the world new, paranoia's simply a word for seeing things as they are. Act as you wish to be seen to act, or leave for some other star. Somebody is prying through your files, probably. Somebody's hand is in your tin of Netscape magic cookies, but relax. If you're an interesting person, morally good in your acts, you have nothing to fear from facts. Axiom 3, for transparency. In the age of information, the only way to hide facts is with interpretations. There's no way to stop the free exchange of idle speculations. In the days before communication, privacy meant staying at home, sitting in the dark with curtains shut, unsure whether to answer the phone. But these are different times. Now the bottom line is that everyone should prepare to be known. Most of your friends will still like you fine. X said to Y what A said to B. B wrote an email and sent it to me. I showed C and C wrote to A. Flaming World War III. Cut, paste, forward, copy, CC, go with the flow. Our ambition should be to love what we finally know. Or if it proves unlovable, simply to go. Our loyalties should shift in view according to what we know and who we are speaking to. Once I was loyal to you and prepared to be against information. Now I'm loyal to information, maybe I'm disloyal to you. My loyalty becomes more complex and cubist with every new fact I learn. Depends who I'm speaking to and who they speak to in turn. Axiom 5 for information workers who wish to stay alive. Supply, never withhold the information requested, with total disregard for interests personal and vested. Chinese whispers is an analog game where the signal degraded between brain and brain. Digital whispers is the same in reverse. The word we spread gets better, not worse. Better, not worse. X said to Y what A said to B. B wrote an email and sent it to me. I showed C and C wrote away. Flaming World War III. Cut, paste, forward, copy, CC, go with the flow. Our ambition should be to love what we finally know. Or if it proves unlovable, simply to go.
Information is from the 97 full-length Ping Pong and Momus. Nick Curry was my guest from our London studios. You can get 2 Momus albums in North America, Ping Pong and 20 Vodka Jellies. Both of these are available in North America from a Michigan-based indie label called Le Grand Magistry. You are still listening to Brave New Waves on CBC Radio 2. My name is Patti Schmidt. Oh yeah, and if you have comments, suggestions, and letters, you can send them to us at Brave New Waves, P.O. Box 6000, Montreal, Quebec, H3C 3A8, or by email at bnw@montreal.src.ca. Here's something from a Momus fan, Stephen Merritt. He's recorded a solo album calling himself the Gothic Archies, and Stephen Merritt has convinced Momus to sing one of his songs for his forthcoming 6th project. This, though, the Gothic Archies and something called Ever Falls the Twilight.